So I'm going to turn now to the issue that I mentioned before the break, which is the consideration that was given to suspending the Prophylate HT license in late 1989. The most convenient way to tell the story is to go to a document, DHSC 0001 349, please. And if we could go to page 3 of that document. This is a note of a meeting held on the 13th of November 1989. The meeting is of a body called the Inspection Action Group, which is within the DHSS. We can see a list of those who were present. Dr. Fowler is one of those, Mr. Slogham, some other names that are familiar as well. If we go over to page 4 of this document, this is item 5 of that meeting. And what I propose to do so is read this document through because it provides the background to this issue, as well as the proposals for what should be done next. This item is headed Alpha Therapeutics Corporation, USA. The minutes record this. Alpha Therapeutics is a subsidiary of the Green Cross Corporation of Japan. A comprehensive range of blood products is made at the Los Angeles site. The site was inspected on the 6th to the 10th of October 1989. The inspection, which covered the manufacture of blood products, the sterilization and filling into dose form containers, and the pasteurization of those finished products, revealed that the company had failed to correct a major deficiency found at a previous inspection in February 1988, in spite of indicating that they would do so in order to ensure the production of viral-free factor VIII prophylate. Dr. Kavanagh, Principal Medicines Inspector, explained that the company, in common with other commercial blood products manufacturers, employed a viral inactivation procedure at a bulk intermediate stage rather than a terminal pasteurization step. A consequence of using such a method was that the product then had to be protected from possible recontamination during the remaining stages of processing. This was generally achieved by handling virus-inactivated material in specially constructed, isolated areas, equipped with their own independent air supply, dedicated equipment, and dedicated staff clothing. Alpha Therapeutic had built such an area where they prepared their factor VIII product for the US market. The prophylate material for the UK, however, was made differently. The virus inactivation step involved heating a slurry of freeze-dried factor VIII in heptane. The equipment for this and the area in which it was sited made it extremely likely that heat-treated factor VIII would be recontaminated with untreated factor VIII and/or albumin, with a concomitant risk of possible viral contamination. Dr. Kavanagh described the process and condition as detailed in the inspectorate report and explained that, following the February 1988 inspection, the company's response was that they would investigate ways to isolate the area and fit an independent air supply system. Also, that they would be submitting imminently a UK product license application for the USA-type product, which was made in the viral-controlled area. The inspection in October 1989 showed that nothing had been done. In fact, the situation was worse in that the amount of untreated factor VIII powder present in the heat-treated room was much greater. In addition, the product license application for the new product had not been submitted, brackets received since the inspection report. The company's response to the 1989 inspection remained unsatisfactory. The change to procedures, while an improvement, were mainly cosmetic and did not address the main problem of a shared air supply, absence of air pressure barrier, and the open handling of treated and untreated factor VIII powder in the same room. The company acknowledged that the UK product was inferior to that marketed in the US. the Inspectorate recommended withdrawal of the product license for Profilate as the method used to produce it did not ensure a virus-free product. The group then discussed whether the removal of the license would cause a supply problem, since the company had indicated that they supplied well in excess of 80% of the UK commercial Factor VIII requirements. Mr. Burton, the procurement department, explained that Factor VIII was a licensed hospital-only product. He had investigated the company's claim and established that the blood products laboratory supplied about 70% of the UK requirements, and the remaining 30% of the commercial market was supplied by Alpha and Miles Cutter. The situation was that Alpha only supplied 80% of 30% of the commercial market. Therefore, Mr. Burton considered that there would be no supply problem. However, he referred to earlier problems at BPL and asked whether they were in a position to meet the shortfall. Dr. Kavanagh stated that he understood the deficiencies at BPL had largely been resolved and production procedure had improved, and it was likely that no difficulties would be encountered in this respect. Ms. Renee indicated that this was also HS1 understanding of the supply situation. Other suppliers mentioned were Baxter, Immuno, and Speywood. Mr. Slogan, Principal Pharmaceutical Officer, confirmed that there would be alternative supplies in the near future. 2 product license applications for blood products using the solvent detergent system, namely Monoclate P, were to be considered by the Committee for the Safety of Medicines in November 1989 and were expected to be approved. A Coate HS product license application was to be submitted to the Biological Subcommittee and the CSM in January 1990. A clinical trial exemption was in being for the new detergent system. The variation application from Alpha for Profilate, which had been received in early November 1989, was to be submitted to the CSM, possibly in January 1990. The Medicines Inspectorate commented that if the variation was approved, the GMP, that's good manufacturing practice, for the product was likely to be acceptable. I pause there to note, sir, that in a subsequent memorandum dated the 23rd of November 1989, Mr. Slogan corrected some of the information contained in this paragraph, which he said didn't accurately reflect what he had said at the meeting. The reference for that is MHRA 0033386_019. I don't think I need to take you to that document. Returning to the document that is in front of us from the Inspection Action Group. In view of the critical nature of the problem, the group discussed the possibility of suspending the product license immediately. Mr. Friedman's, solicitor, view was that a serious threat to life would justify immediate suspension of the license under paragraphs 10 and 11 of Schedule 2 of the Act, with concurrent Section 28 action to follow. This was required under paragraph 13 of Schedule 2 to provide the company with appeal rights and to suspend the license for a further adequate period until the variation was approved. Dr. Fowler supported the proposal, pointing out that the product was an extreme patient hazard, as it could be potentially AIDS-contaminated material. The Medicines Inspectorate added that the company had admitted the UK product was inferior to the US product. Ms. Hepburn queried why formal action had not been taken after the 1988 inspection. It appeared that the company's activities had been condoned for almost a year. The Inspectorate pointed out that the company's assurance of improvement had been accepted and they had given the company time to put their house in order, but the recent inspection revealed that the problem had not been sufficiently addressed. The situation had in fact deteriorated and was now unacceptable. The group agreed on immediate suspension of the product license. The chairman explained that in taking this action, it may be necessary to effect a recall of all available material. He reminded the group that the licensing authority could require a product to be withheld from sale only for a period of 6 weeks. In the absence of other withdrawal powers, this would call for the cooperation of the manufacturer. He invited the group to consider. There was general agreement that, in light of the information available, such action was appropriate. Dr. Kavanagh did not foresee any problems in this sphere. Ms. Reaney expressed concern about the publicity which a drug alert would attract. She asked for HS1 to be involved in drafting the alert message. They were likely to consult legal advisors. She confirmed the understanding that, while the product was hospital-only, haemophiliac patients would have received supplies from consultants and stored these in home refrigerators. It would be possible to identify patients by registration. The chairman reminded the group that, in addition to the normal procedure whereby the proposals would require clearance with the top of the MCA, this particular case was likely to be referred to ministers before action took place. The group agreed, 1, to recall all available Factor VIII material manufactured by Alpha, Medicines Inspectorate to seek manufacturer's agreement. 2, the immediate suspension of a product licence under paragraphs 10 and 11 of Schedule 2 to the Act. 3, a proposed suspension of the licence for a further period of 10 months.
6 months.
Oh, sorry, 6 months, until the product licence variation application had been approved. 4, to liaise with HS1A, that is a department within the DHSS, at all stages. So that was the conclusion of that meeting, which, as we can tell from the content, refers to heat-treated propylate. I won't take you to the inspection report from October 1989, but the reference for it is DHSC 0002412_093. That contains the detail of the point of concern that has been raised at this meeting. There was also some correspondence between Alpha and the DHSS in relation to that report, which can be found at DHSC 0003567_086 and _087. Again, I won't take you to that now. On the 14th of November 1989, Mr. Wilson of the Medicines Control Agency circulated a memo identifying his concerns about the group's reasoning and the proposed actions that came out of that meeting. If I could take you to that, please. It's DHSC 001351. We can see that the minute is from Mr. Wilson, nominally sent to Mr. Franks, but also a number of people copied in, including a number of those who were present at the meeting, such as Dr. Fowler, and other individuals within the DHSS who had an interest. I pick out the name in particular of Dr. Rotblatt there, who will be referred to. Dr. Rotblatt being one of the scientists who was responsible for considering product license applications. We also saw her name raised in respect of the Speywood purification of Factor VIII and Dr. Tuddenham's work on isolating Factor VIII and for gene sequencing. Mr. Wilson referred to a minute of the 13th of November, which summarised the meeting of the Inspection Action Group. And then he says that he has several concerns, as set out below, that relate to the case for action proposed, and if the action were to be endorsed, the steps necessary for implementing it. What Mr. Wilson wrote is this, under the title, The Action Proposed. He says, the major deficiency, as set out in the inspector's report, existed in February 1988, at the time of the earlier inspection. We did not then apparently consider the process to be so unsafe as to warrant regulatory action. Mr. Booth's minutes refers to the situation having deteriorated since then, and to it now being considered critical. I see from the inspector's report that the heat treatment room was worse than at the time of the previous inspection. This may be so, but does this make the process materially less safe than in 1988? Is there some other aspect which has got significantly worse? Further, the company list in their letter of the 2nd of November that a number of steps have been instituted which appear at least partially to address the alleged critical deficiencies. Nothing is said in Mr. Booth's minute about whether these steps are regarded as materially meeting the critical deficiencies, and if not, why not? Can we have further written comments from the Inspectorate and medical advice on this aspect urgently? Paragraph 4. Mr. Booth does not state under what provisions in Section 28 regulatory action is proposed, but I gather it is probably Section 28. I'm not sure if that is an 8, I think.
Probably E, I would think.
An E or an A, possibly an E, relating to unsuitable manufacturing premises. But essentially, the concern relates to safety, and I would like to know what medical advice was available to the IAG and what that advice was. Given that this product has been available in the UK for a long time and has, I understand, a high reputation for product safety, is there any evidence at all from clinical use to suggest that the risks of contaminated products identified by the inspectors may be actually leading to cases of viral infection in patients? Does the present process lend itself to that possibility, and what is the nature of the risk to patients? I understand that Dr. Rotblatt has not had opportunity to comment on the papers, and I think it would be helpful if she saw them urgently, both in respect of this and other aspects, and if we had her comments available in writing. Generally, I think we need her views as to whether, on the basis of the evidence, there is an immediate hazard to health, and if so, what it is. Could Mr. Booth please provide her with a set of the papers urgently? Nor am I clear from Mr. Booth's report what legal advice was given to the IAG. Given the potential significance of the recommendations proposed, I would also like written confirmation from, this is the legal department within the DHSS, that from the legal angle, they consider that the evidence for the regulatory action proposed would stand up to scrutiny, e.g. if a company used their rights to apply for a person-appointed hearing. Please also clarify on what provisions of Section 28 it is proposed to rely. Implementation. I note that it is said that Supply Branch and SH1 say that BPL could meet the gap created by the suspension of Alpha's product licence. Before we go ahead with suspension, I think we would need to have some formal assurance on this point from a senior level in BPL, including assurance that they could do so without delay, so that no one would be at any risk of being unable immediately to replace their stocks of Factor 8. Can HS1 or PD, Procurements Division, confirm that this is BPL's view, making any discrete inquiry necessary? Incidentally, if BPL can fully meet this requirement, why are they not doing so at present, given that their product is much cheaper for the NHS than the imported commercial product? Perhaps HS1 can say. As to the other suppliers existing or shortly to be approved, what are they, and could we have a gap where unlicensed commercial product would be substituted for the Alpha product? If we were to take the regulatory steps as proposed, the plan of action needs to be worked out. Immediate suspension and recall of stocks from hospitals and patients, especially in the present highly charged public and political atmosphere regarding haemophiliacs and HIV infection, is likely to lead to much publicity and questioning. HS1 need to advise on any advanced and confidential consultations they would think necessary with, for example, the NHS Haemophiliac Reference Centre and with the Haemophilia Society, so as to ensure that, as far as possible, key people are prepared before any announcement. I note in any case that HS1 are concerned about the publicity if action as proposed goes ahead. We need to have a considered view urgently on how they see this matter and on any preparatory arrangements as outlined in paragraph 7. That's the previous paragraph. Finally, before any decision to take regulatory action on this issue, we will need to consult ministers to get their endorsement for what is proposed, i.e. both the action itself and the proposals for its implementation, on which, of course, ID, that's Information Division, would need to be brought in. In any submission to ministers, I think we would need to bring out why we were now proposing regulatory action, i.e. what had materially changed since February 1988, and to explain why such action was not thought necessary in February 1988. Can I have further advice on this point urgently? For example, how does this present hazard differ, if at all, from the hazard perceived in February 1988? He then goes on to propose a further meeting and notes that he has provided these papers to Dr. Jones. That is from Mr. Wilson of the Medicines Control Agency. Two memoranda were prepared in response to this, which I need not take you to, sir. They dealt with the ability of BPL and commercial providers to make up any shortfall. They can be summarised as showing that, as saying there was an expectation that any shortfall could be met, though it should be noted that Dr. Rotblatt, in a minute of the 15th of November 1989, cast some doubt on the availability of commercial product. The references are DHSC 301357, DHSC 301350, and DHSC 302412_074. If we could have DHSC 001363 on the screen, please. This is from the National Biological Standards Board, so NIBSC, and it is a minute written for the attention of Mr. Wilson of the Medicines Control Agency, the author of the previous minute, and it comes from S.L. Jeffcoat. What it says is this. Following our telephone conversation this morning and an analysis of the data and commentary faxed by Mr. Booth, we have come to these conclusions. 1. There is no evidence suggesting that the product is unsafe. Batches of prophylate have been tested here in accordance with the product license, found to meet specifications and released to the market. This testing has included tests for antibodies to HIV and for presence of HBsAg on both the final product and the plasma pools. 2. The Inspectorate has made pertinent criticisms of the manufacturing process that reveal breaches of good manufacturing practice. However, we feel that the company are responding to the criticisms made, as evidenced by the letter of the 2nd of November, and that the IAG is perhaps over-hasty in its recommendations. 3. We feel that your own commentary dealt with the essential points extremely clearly. That is directed to Mr. Wilson and refers to the previous minute that we looked at. 4. Dr. Duncan Thomas has had a lengthy discussion with Francis Rotblatt. We don't feel that it is necessary for us to be present at your meeting tomorrow. There is some marginalia on this document, referring to the HIV tests. This states, if we could just load that top section up. Hard to decipher, but the word incorrect is underlined, and then written is not found as HIV, and then there is an A, is in other fractions.
That must be antibody.
I think that's antibody, yes. HIV antibody is in other fractions.
As in other fractions, is it?
I think I read that as is in other fractions.
There are two prepositions there which I don't quite interpret. Anyway.
Then there are the words something found virus.
May find virus?
May find virus. I think it's may find virus. The marginalia in respect of Duncan Thomas's conversation with Francis Rotblatt is no clinical data. I'm afraid so I can't assist in interpreting those.
There's a line from HIV to that, so it'll be in relation to that, one thinks.
Yes, that is, sorry, the first piece of marginalia is related to the HIV testing that NIBSC says that it has done. There is some further marginalia in respect of point 4, Dr. Thomas's conversation with Dr. Rotblat, and that says, I think, no clinical data. I'm afraid I can't assist any further with that. So what we can see, if we take stock at this stage, is that the Inspectorate Action Group argued for immediate suspension of a product licence and recall of a product. Mr. Wilson from the MCA cast some doubt on their reasoning and raised concerns about how such a process would be implemented. NIBSC have written, in essence, in support of Mr. Wilson's position, and we have also had some memoranda which express a view that any shortfall would be made good by a combination of BPL and commercial products. The next stage, there is other documentation around this, but the next document I'm going to...
Now, that document is the 15th of November.
Yes, sir.
Right.
The next document is the 24th of November. And this is the submission that was made to the Minister of State. It is DHSC 0001368, please. We can see that this is from Mr. Wilson. It is dated the 24th of November 1989. It is sent to a large number of people, including Dr. Metters, that's Dr. Jeremy Metters, and, if he agreed, to the Private Secretary of the Minister of State for Health. The Minister of State for Health at that time was Virginia Bottomley. We can see it's also sent to the private offices of the Secretary of State, and the Parliamentary Undersecretary of State, the junior minister. What Mr. Wilson wrote in this submission to the minister is this. Summary. This submission informs the Minister of State for Health of an adverse inspection report relating to the manufacturing standards for a commercial factor VIII blood product, Propylate, marketed in the UK by a US-based firm, Alpha Therapeutic Corporation. The potential risks to health are not considered by officials to warrant any immediate regulatory action, for example, to suspend marketing or withdraw stocks, but it is proposed to take steps to persuade the company to discontinue to supply Propylate made by the process currently used for the UK market. So that's sort of the summary, and we can see that the thinking has developed from the initial inspection action group to this submission. I'm going to take you through the entirety of this document, sir, because it's important to the decision-making to understand the terms in which the decision was put to the minister. Background, the product. Propylate is marketed by the Alpha Therapeutic Corporation, based in Los Angeles and owned by the Green Cross Corporation Company of Japan. It has now been licensed in the UK since 1985. The Blood Products Laboratory now provides about 70% of the market in England and Wales, and Propylate possibly about 20%. In recent years, before BPL facilities were developed, Propylate supplied a larger proportion of the UK market. It has also been widely marketed internationally. It has a good track record for quality and safety. Go over to the next page, please. Inspections. In February 1988, the Medicines Inspectorate of the Department carried out an inspection of the plant facilities used for Propylate. They listed 4 major deficiencies, which the company assured them would be dealt with. These included deficiencies relating to the risk of recontamination of heat-treated factor VIII powder by untreated powder because of inadequate arrangements for the separation of the different stages in the treatment process. At the time of this inspection, the heptane heat treatment process used by Alpha was considered to be the best of available methods then in commercial use. The deficiencies identified related to the way the company operated the process, not the process itself. It seems most probable that these deficiencies had existed at least since the product was licensed in the UK in 1985. Subsequent monitoring of the situation indicated that whilst the other deficiencies had been dealt with, the situation giving rise to a risk of recontamination had not. A second visit by the inspectors in October 1989 confirmed that the deficiency still remained and that conditions had deteriorated. On receipt of further adverse report following that inspection, the company say they have instituted a number of changes which should reduce but will not eliminate the risk. Alternative process. Prophylate marketed in the US is now produced using a new method, different to the heptane treatment method still used for the product marketed in the UK. The new method is claimed to produce a superior, i.e. safer, product. The company have recently applied to have their UK product license varied so as to market the US version in the UK. The US version is made in separate new facilities. It seems likely that the company have been reluctant to spend substantial sums on upgrading the heptane process when they plan to switch production to the new facilities. I pause there, sir, to note that this seems to be a reference to the new solvent detergent method. Risk assessment. Prophylate produced by the heptane treatment process has been widely used in the UK and elsewhere for a number of years. The deficiencies in that process revealed by the inspection report are of similar long standing. If any of the heptane treatment prophylate has been contaminated as a result of processing deficiency, the theoretical risks include hepatitis B, non-A, non-B hepatitis, HIV. The data about infections in haemophiliac patients is relatively well documented because of the comparatively small numbers and the specialised hospital centres dealing with them, which means that treatment can be closely monitored. Relative risks of different products used by haemophiliac patients can accordingly be assessed with more confidence than in other areas. Hepatitis B. There is no clinical evidence in the UK of hepatitis B transmission from prophylate. Most patients are immune due to previous infection or vaccinations, so the at-risk pool of patients is small. All donor blood is tested for hepatitis B virus as well as for HIV antibodies. Non-A, non-B hepatitis. Prophylate produced by the heptane treatment method is a first-generation factor VIII product, and all these products are associated with some risk of transmission of non-A, non-B. But there is no evidence to suggest any higher risk from prophylate than from other first-generation products. Indeed, a study at the Royal Free on patients previously untreated with factor VIII suggests that prophylate has a very low transmission rate for non-A, non-B hepatitis. HIV. The theoretical risk cannot be ruled out, but there is no evidence of any HIV transmission in the UK by this product, nor of any such case outside the UK. Reference Centre Directors. We have been in touch in confidence with Dr. Ritzer, Director of the Oxford Haemophilia Reference Centre, who is also Chairman of the Directors of the UK Haemophiliac Reference Centre. He has confirmed that heptane treatment prophylate has performed relatively well and was regarded often as the preferred option for patients starting on factor VIII treatment. He was not aware of any clinical evidence that heptane treatment prophylate is or has been less safe than other factor VIII products. He was most concerned to avoid any additional pressures on haemophiliacs and their doctors at this time, and hoped there could be a low-profile resolution of any perceived problem. Regulatory action. The company has failed over a period of some 20 months to deal effectively with a major deficiency in their manufacturing process, which could affect the safety of their product. In spite of a lack of evidence to suggest that heptane treatment prophylate has been associated with any abnormal levels of infection, MCA have considered whether regulatory action should be taken. This would involve suspension of a product license, if necessary with immediate effect. If we immediately suspend, it would be logical also to arrange a recall of stocks from hospitals and patients. Some will have stocks in fridges at home. Indeed, such a step would be virtually inevitable. Next page, please. Such action would remove very quickly any prospect of further exposure of haemophiliac patients to heptane-treated prophylate. It is likely that BPL could, at least for some months, meet the shortfall in supply, though it is also likely that there will be increased use of other commercial products, some not yet licensed, and some may have a less good clinical safety record than prophylate. 14, and the first sentence is emphasised and underlined. However, the clinical record of heptane treatment prophylate does not suggest that, on safety grounds, the evidence is there to warrant immediate suspension. Such action would give rise to, underlined, great anxieties amongst the haemophiliac community, a very high percentage of whom will have used prophylate at some stage. It would not be possible to assure them that the problem related only to the recent production. Many would also currently be using prophylate. There would be much attendant publicity. Questions would be asked as to why, if suspension is necessary now, the action was not taken when our inspectors first became concerned in February 1988, insofar as the deficiencies then found have not fundamentally changed. Underlined, no immediate suspension would provide the company with time to exercise their right of appeal before the decision becomes public and took effect. There is a footnote which explains that the company would have a right under the Medicines Act, go down to the bottom please, Shumik, thank you. The company would have a right under the Medicines Act to make representations to a person appointed by the licensing authority. These are formal hearings in private, followed by a report of the proceedings to the licensing authority. The hearing would be in private unless the company wished otherwise. The report is private. And going back to the main body of the text, this appeal will probably be in private, but knowledge of it could become public.
Just stop there for a moment. We've got a highlighted box, which shouldn't be highlighted, I think. Should it?
It is. So we're back. If we see the footnote.
Yes.
That is the footnote to which I just took you, which explained about the right of appeal.
I see. Right.
Then back to paragraph 15 and this appeal, picking it up from there. This appeal would probably be in private, but knowledge of it could become public. The final decision whether or not to confirm the suspension would be for ministers as the licensing authority. If a product were suspended following an appeal, the attendant publicity might be less than with immediate suspension, but the difficulties could be of the same order, with questions also as to why, if there were safety concerns, action had not been taken earlier. Alternatives to regulatory action. The company is known to want to switch production for the UK market to its new process. It cannot market prophylate made by this process in the UK until its product license has been varied. However, it is possible that the company could be persuaded to begin withdrawal of a heptane treatment prophylate ahead of marketing of a new process product. Ahead of marketing of a new process product here for commercial reasons. Whilst not making any deal with the company, we could also expedite processing the application to vary the UK licence, though it may take some months even so. The company might be helped in reaching its decision if they believe that regulatory action might be taken against their licence if they do not act voluntarily. Conclusions. MCA and HS1, with their medical and legal colleagues, and the Procurement Directorate have considered the issues. As noted above, they have concluded that, whilst the process deficiencies revealed by the Inspectorate are a cause of concern, the clinical record of heptane treatment prophylate does not suggest that these apparently long-standing deficiencies are such as to warrant immediate regulatory action against the product. They concluded that a better alternative would be to open discussions with the company with a view to securing early withdrawal of heptane treatment prophylate, plus action to speed up consideration of the company's application to vary its prophylate license so as to market the newer version of the product now sold in the US. The Minister of State is invited to note these conclusions and to say whether she endorses them. That is from Mr. Wilson. The date of that document is the 24th of November 1989. The response from the Minister is at DHSC 0001366. It is dated the 6th of December 1989, sent to Mr. Wilson from the Minister's private office. It says, "Thank you for your submission of the 24th of November. Mrs. Bottomley has considered this and is not happy with the line proposed. She would prefer regulatory action to be taken and would welcome advice on the consequences of this." The response from Mr. Wilson comes in a document of the 15th of December 1989, which is at DHSC 0001375. We can see again copied to a large number of individuals, including Dr. Metters, the Deputy Chief Medical Officer, and the Minister of State for Health's private office. What Mr. Wilson says is this: "The Minister of State has indicated via your minute of the 6th of December that she would prefer regulatory action to be taken against the Factor VIII product Profilate. This was in response to my submission dated the 24th of November. She asked for a note on the consequences of such action. Advice to that end is set out in the annex. Briefly, regulatory action could involve A, immediate suspension of a product license, for which we have to be satisfied that this is necessary in the interests of safety, or B, a proposal to suspend, giving the company appeal rights provided they give notice within 28 days. Any suspension would not then take effect until the appeal rights have been exhausted, which could take several months. The annex refers to the consequences of taking either a course for the company, for patients, and for the licensing authority. Immediate suspension. Professional advice is that, on balance, we do not have sufficient evidence to support immediate suspension. This position was reached taking into account the theoretical risk posed by the deficiencies noted by the inspectors, the lack of problems in the batch release of a product from NIBSC, and the fact that there is no clinical evidence about the use of a product which gives rise to concern. On the basis of that advice, immediate suspension would cause unwarranted concern to the many patients who are or have used Profilate. Such action has to be seen also in the context that, having studied the company's dossier, we now think it's most likely that the licensing authority will be able to agree their application for a variation to their existing license before the end of January. The Committee on the Safety of Medicines will consider it on the 25th of January. Once that variation is agreed, it will no longer be possible for the company to market further supplies of the heptane treatment Profilate in the UK. The company has, we understand, ample stocks of the new solvent detergent-treated Profilate and will wish to supply it to the UK market without delay. So, immediate suspension is now likely only to cut short cessation of supply of the product by a matter of a few weeks. With that in mind, and given the lack of clinical evidence of any abnormal safety hazard, the concern immediate suspension would cause to the haemophiliacs and the serious public questions to which it would give rise, our advice to the Minister must remain strongly against such action. It is true that we cannot say that there is not a potentially greater risk of infection from Profilate because of the manufacturing deficiencies, but that risk has to be assessed as very remote given the usage of Profilate in recent years. Proposal to suspend. As an alternative, we could, however, inform the company that we propose to suspend the license, but not with immediate effect, unless they are willing voluntarily to cease to market the heptane treatment product. A proposal to suspend would leave the company in no doubt that we were dissatisfied both with their lack of progress in putting right the deficiencies and with the present situation regarding the production process. It would seem fully warrantable. Such action by the licensing authority would not be made public. The company could then choose to exercise its appeal rights, but we think this is unlikely. The company must indicate whether or not it wishes to do so within 28 days. Any such action would, in practice, be likely to be overtaken by the grant of a variation before the end of January, and the company will no doubt take that into account in deciding how to respond. We should seek in discussion with the company to press them to exchange existing heptane treatment prophylate held by health authorities in the UK for the new product. We believe that the company may be receptive to this approach and will be anxious to cooperate. Conclusion. If the Minister wishes regulatory action to be taken, we would accordingly advise that this should not be with immediate effect. Is the Minister content? If so, we will proceed urgently with action, as at paragraphs 5 and 6 above. We will be happy to discuss if she wishes. That is signed by Mr. Wilson, and I remind you, sir, that is the 15th of December, 1989. The annexes to the document are at pages 4 to 6. I'm not going to take you all of the way through those. I would point out, sorry, if we could go to page 4, please, Shumik. We have the consequences for the company set out, and that discusses some of the possibilities that have been raised in the main minute. Then the consequences for people with haemophilia, including the need to switch to a different product. And at the top of page 5, underlined, we cannot say that patients switching from prophylate to other commercial products would necessarily be transferring to a potentially less risky product. Indeed, we suspect that in some cases, the reverse might be the case. There may be in the order of 2,000 patients currently using prophylate. The consequences for the department. We look at paragraph 4. We can see that it's noted that any announcement of immediate suspension would give rise to public and parliamentary questions about the basis for the action, and which could receive considerable media attention. If I quote from a document, it would not be easy to explain why action was being taken now when it could not be shown that the problem was a new one. Attention might rapidly switch to that issue with accusations of negligence by the licensing authority. It would be possible partially to answer this by reference to the fact that when our inspectors first identified the deficiencies, February 1988, the BPL could not make up the then considerably bigger share of the UK market held by prophylate, and that we could not be confident that more acceptable products would have been available. Clinicians could have chosen, on a named patient basis, to prescribe products without a UK licence, with a possibly greater risk than prophylate. But that response would in turn raise concerns about other products, and would be an admission that we have regarded the product as potentially unsafe for nearly 2 years. If the decision were that the licence should be suspended but without immediate effect, the consequences would be, it goes on to discuss the consequences for the company, and then we turn over the next page. For people with haemophilia, if I read from that section, paragraph 6, if the company facing suspension decided to cease supply, then some would need to switch to other products when existing stocks available to them were used up. By then, it could well be the case that the new prophylate, not the heptane treatment product, would be available. If the company ceased to supply the heptane treatment product ahead of the availability of the new product, they would be likely to indicate that this was for commercial reasons. B, the prospect of causing serious concern amongst haemophiliacs and hospital specialists would be much reduced as compared with immediate suspension, and there would be less likelihood of patients being switched to other commercial products which might not be any safer. And the consequences for the licensing authority of not suspending immediately. The licensing authority would not be obliged to publicise either the proposal to suspend or any final suspension. But we should need to tell the EC Committee on Proprietary Medicinal Products of the suspension, that being a community obligation. B, we would not be obliged to tell directors of haemophiliac reference centres, but once the suspension had been given effect, we would wish to do so on the expectation that they would not then seek to publicise the matter. C, if the company, facing possible suspension, ceased to supply the product, there would be no action required of the licensing authority. So those are the annexes to the submission of the 15th of December. The reply to that submission came on the 19th of January 1990. Could we have on screen, please, DHSC 0001374. Sent to Mr. Wilson, again sent to a number of others as well, and from the Minister of State's private office. The decision is this: thank you for your submission of the 15th of December. As I previously confirmed to your secretary, Mrs. Bottomley has considered this and is content to accept your advice and to act as set out in paragraphs 5 and 6. And that is the proposal to indicate to the company that they proposed to suspend the licence, but not taking immediate action on the licence. It appears that that was then acted upon because we have a letter dated the 26th of January 1990, which comes from Alpha Therapeutics UK and from JP Betts, the Regulatory and Technical Affairs Manager, and it was sent to Mr. J. Bewley of the Committee of the Safety of Medicines of the MCA. And what it says is this in respect of prophylate heat-treated. This is to confirm our telephone conversation of today concerning the above product. It's MHRA 00333866_009. Apologies, Shoemaker, should have said that. So this is the letter that the company sends to the Committee on the Safety of Medicines. This is to confirm our telephone conversation of today concerning the above product. The last batch of prophylate heat-treated to be imported into the UK was in the middle of December 1989. We do not intend to import into the UK any further batches of this product. As you may know, a variation application to allow the use of solvent detergent prophylate SD is currently outstanding with the MCA. I would like to emphasise that the decision not to import further batches of prophylate heat-treated has been made on the basis of the heavy demands on our manufacturing facility in the USA and also the current market situation in the UK. As predicted, sir, the company is explaining it by reference to commercial matters rather than safety matters. I will finish this section, sir, by noting a memo dated the 11th of January 1990, in which it was reported that the new facility for the manufacture of prophylate solvent detergent method, prophylate SD, had been inspected and found to be acceptable. The reference to that is MHRA 003382_007. And that concludes the section on the consideration of the suspension of the prophylate HT license. The outcome appears to be that the company was warned that there was a proposal to suspend, and in response to that warning, the company voluntarily agreed not to import any further products into the UK. I note the time, sir. We have left a very short section on Factor 9 and then a slightly longer section on the donors used by Abbott and Alpha. I suspect that you may wish to return to that tomorrow.
Well, you certainly don't have time to present that tonight, not least because it's now 4:35. So we'll take a break. until 10 o'clock tomorrow, when you can continue and deal with those two remaining matters, at least those matters that remain for the moment, in respect of Abbott Alpha. So 10 o'clock tomorrow.